Okay, let's just jump right into this. Welcome to this explainer on the really profound teachings of mystic and author Neville Goddard. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed how desperately wishing for your goals often feels like the exact thing that's pushing them further and further away? You know the drill. You set a goal, you visualize it, you long for it, and yet it just stays perpetually out of reach. Well, today, we're diving deep into the source material of Neville Goddard's lectures to uncover a fundamental mistake most of us are making with our imagination, and how one incredibly simple shift in perspective can literally change everything.
It's a universal problem, isn't it? Why do our deepest desires often remain just that, desires? You might feel chronically stuck in this endless cycle of lack, despite wanting something so incredibly badly. You might be putting in all the physical effort, reading all the right self-help books, doing the whole shebang, and yet your reality simply doesn't budge. But according to Goddard's philosophy, the issue actually isn't a lack of effort. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how our own consciousness actually operates. Goddard hit the nail on the head when he said this: every man automatically expresses that which he is conscious of being. This right here is the absolute bedrock of his teaching. It is not our desperate wishing that creates our reality. It's our state of consciousness. Without even realizing it, in every single moment, we are commanding ourselves to be and have exactly what we are conscious of being and having. So if your reality isn't looking the way you want it to, we have to take a hard look at the state of consciousness you're currently occupying.
To really grasp this, Goddard introduces two entirely different paths. Let's look at the first one, the spectator, thinking of the end.
Now, this is the way most of us unconsciously operate day to day. Thinking of the end means you are observing your desire from a distance. Think of a movie theater. When you are thinking of your goal, you are a passive spectator. You're sitting way back in the audience watching the movie play out on the screen way in front of you. You are completely separated from the action. And as long as you merely think about your ideal state, it just remains a mere possibility floating out there in some distant, unreachable future.
When you're playing the role of the spectator, you're creating a massive gap. There's you, the individual thinker, the subject, and then there is the thing being thought about, the object. You're over here, and your goal is way over there. In this state of mind, you are entirely separated from the very thing you're trying to achieve.
And this separation, it forces you into what we can call the confessions of a spectator. You are constantly longing for things. You're always hoping for it to arrive in some blurry future. And let's be honest, it's exhausting, right? You are passively surrendering to your physical senses that keep screaming at you, I don't have this yet. Ultimately, this separation confesses a state of lack. Think about it. If you are hoping to be rich, you are currently conscious of being poor. If you're hoping to be healthy, you're conscious of being sick. You are only conscious of not having the thing you desire.
Which brings us to the massive paradigm shift, stepping out of the audience and right onto the stage, the participant, thinking from the end. When we stack these two mindsets side by side, the difference is honestly night and day. We know that thinking of makes you a spectator. It creates that subject-object gap, and it confesses lack. But thinking from makes you a participant. Instead of separation, you get unification. Instead of lack, it confesses fulfillment. You are no longer viewing the goal as some mere possibility down the road. You're experiencing it as a present reality, right now, entirely in your imagination. To truly think from the end, you have to achieve what Goddard calls unification. It's basically becoming completely identified with your conception until you know it to be yourself. Let's break down the psychology for a second, because it's fascinating. When you think from the end, you actually neutralize the desire completely. Why? Well, because you literally cannot continue to desperately want something you already have. By assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, all that exhausting longing just vanishes, and it's replaced by a calm, solid knowing. So, how do we actually bridge this gap in our own minds? Let's talk about unifying with your desire using a real-world story. How do you actually move from the audience to the stage? Well, back in the 1930s, Neville desperately wanted to travel from freezing New York to his home in Barbados for the winter. But there was a catch. He had absolutely zero money. So he went to his mentor, an Ethiopian rabbi named Abdullah. And Abdullah outright refused to let Neville merely wish to visit Barbados. When Neville explained that he was broke, Abdullah simply told him, "You are in Barbados, Neville. You want to be there? Wherever you want to be, there you are." He insisted that Neville had to sleep every single night in his imagination, as if he were actually sleeping in his childhood bed back in Barbados. He couldn't just think of Barbados. He had to view the entire world from Barbados. Holding the fulfilled desire in your mind means you are taking full, complete ownership of your reality. And Neville did exactly what his mentor said. He's literally walking the freezing streets of New York, but in his imagination, he's feeling the warm tropical breeze of Barbados. He didn't stress about how he would get there, he simply lived in the end. And wouldn't you know it, through a totally unexpected series of events involving his brother, a fully paid, non-refundable ticket was just handed to him.
Which leads us perfectly into the actionable part of this, how to embody the end.
So how do you actually cross the bridge into your desired state? Goddard laid it out in 3 really specific steps. First up, clearly define your objective. Know exactly what you want. Second, imagine the sensory outcome. This part is absolutely crucial. You have to experience in your imagination exactly what you would experience in the flesh if the goal were already realized. What are you touching? What are you hearing? Third, and this is the big one, feel the reality of this end state as you're drifting off to sleep. This is what anchors that brand new consciousness deep within you.
And here's the best part. Once you feel that reality, you don't need to micromanage the how. Goddard writes, the assumption of the wish fulfilled is the ship that carries you over the unknown seas. When you assume the feeling of the end, that feeling naturally dictates the means. The source text explains that your 4-dimensional self basically constructs what Goddard calls a bridge of incidents. It's a series of physical world events that will inevitably, naturally lead you to the realization of your goal. You don't have to manage the bridge, you just have to stay in the end.
But to maintain this state, there are some pretty strict ground rules for being the participant. You absolutely must shut the door to your physical senses. You have to actively ignore any limiting appearances in your current 3D reality that try to deny your assumption. And you must match your inner speech, that internal dialogue running in your head, to the fulfilled desire. That means no complaining and absolutely no confessing lack. You have to remain intensely loyal to this new reality, translating your dream into your present state of being.
If you take away anything today, make it this. Signs follow. They do not precede. The dawn of your new reality always happens internally first. You are not going to see the proof in the physical world before you embody it in your own consciousness. The physical world is literally just a mirror, and it's eventually going to bear witness to whatever state you persistently hold inside.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look at your own deepest goals right now. Are you just watching your life from the audience, merely hoping and wishing for a better future? Or are you finally ready to step up, claim your consciousness, and act on the stage by thinking from the end? The choice and the incredible power of your imagination is entirely in your hands.